Was that what you were doing today?
It's going to be 5 years or 7.
Sure, I wouldn't get out there and do that.
I don't know why.
What did we take the last building tax and dedicated towards? Do we dedicate that towards it?
Yeah.
Shelley, we did an ordinance a while back where we took the, sales tax, construction sales tax, and dedicated it towards streets, didn't we?
I don't think we did an ordinance. I think that it was just through the budget document we made that switch.
So I have started the recording.
Okay, you want me to start the meeting?
Well, you don't have a quorum.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order of the special council.
Deputy Mayor Wells?
Yes.
You don't have a quorum.
We can't have a meeting until there's a quorum.
We can't vote, but we can meet, can't we?
Well, you can always talk and visit, but it wouldn't be a meeting.
If there's not a quorum, we can't have a meeting.
It's everybody. Oh, Baggett's
So-
here, his truck's out front.
Yeah, you could certainly talk, the two of you, but it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a meeting.
I didn't mean that to be smart.
Let's talk about the topic, can't we?
Yeah, you can talk about the topic.
Yes,
Great.
there's just not a
You
meeting.
can't call the
Yeah.
meeting to order.
We just
Okay,
can't call the
I'm
meeting
not
to
calling the
order.
meeting to order of the special
So I think
city,
this- Maybe this door. There's one.
There we go.
Okay, now we can call it to order. Well, if you weren't so important.
Deputy Mayor Wells, can you turn your mic on?
Yes. I'd like to call to order the special city council meeting on the $20 car tab fee ad hoc. And this is July 3rd, 2017. Could you please do roll call?
Deputy Mayor Wells.
Here.
Let me start over. Deputy Mayor Wells.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
He's here and he's on his way. Okay, let's look at the consent agenda. The only item that we have listed is the minutes for the May 1st, 2017 ad hoc committee meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay,
So moved.
and Pelosa seconds it. Okay. Let's move on to the discussion items, the full spectrum of issues regarding the $20 car tab fee. Yes. Oh, thank you. All those in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. I'm going to try to move on. Okay. We're doing the discussion items, the full spectrum of issues regarding the $20 car tab fee. And as the chair, I'd kind of like to share with you what I'd like to see us begin to shoot for as closure. And this is just brainstorming. But I think that we are to the point where we might be ready to make a recommendation, I'm not sure in what format, back to the rest of the council regarding whether we want to move forward, whether we recommend whether we move forward at this time or any time with the $20 car tab fee. That's one item. Another item that we've not directly discussed, and we might want to spend some time discussing tonight, is if we want to disband the Transportation Benefit Board and go back, realizing it does create some limitations, and just have the City Council as that body doing that function. Because remember, we're going to take these back as recommendations to the whole council, and they will make the final determination. And the third item that I see out there is that we all realize that money is short and that there is no one-time fix, and that if we come up with some kind of strategies, it may take a number of years to get up to where we want to be, and that we need to start looking at that. In addition to continuing to look at these very slim other fiscal, I would say opportunities, but chances for recovering money. those are the three items that I see that we are moving towards. Any discussion about those three items? Bill, you look like you're thinking overtly.
I agree that. Can you hear me now? No, it's on. It's on it. Just push that one time, the one right there. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, I was pushing too many, I'm sorry. Yes, I feel that the more the data that we get from staff, and looking at the current report today, there's not a lot of money
No.
being dealt with, like projects can delay, they need them, and so forth. It just goes on and on. But there isn't a lot of money. It doesn't appear to me that big dollars, big funding, that we can delve out of these type of reports. So I guess the question that I have in my own mind is, when will we pull the plug on our review?
Though that's why I said that we need to look at those three issues.
Yeah, right.
And the idea being that some of those issues I think we can get closure on sooner than others, and that will lead us to the point where when we're going to pull the plug on our review.
What I would like to see is, say that we're done in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. At the end of that, I would like to see what funding we've been able to retrieve
Yeah.
from all the directors going through their budgets.
Yeah.
And then, if say that we have, well, the mayor, she came up with a little over $1 million, the last meeting. Now, if we can come up with another $1 million out of the total work that the directors have done, then that, I think that would be good. Then I think we need to look at, okay, what are we really trying to come up with? What kind of funding are we trying to come up with? A sustainable funding.
Yeah. Okay, sustainable. Okay.
And it may be far less than what we had initially talked about.
Yeah.
5 million or,
Yeah.
7 million. That may not, we may end up looking at all these reports and saying to ourselves, the different departments look like they're working towards mean and lean. And then we have to start prioritizing where that money is going to go as far as our street maintenance, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. I'm going to let Bob speak, and then it'll be your turn, and because I want everyone to be able to feel comfortable adding some topics to this list of 3, and now we have 4, which may be the most important one, Bill, the one you added about sustainability. I think that it's good that we have maybe a one-time fix, but I think all of us here are looking at the reasonable sustainability of coming up with something so that it's predictable and so on. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you. I agree with what Councilmember Pelosa has proposed, but I think that what we really need to recommend here in getting started is take that money that Councilmember Pelosa talked about, which probably would be, when you look at all the nuts and bolts and the $1 million plus that the mayor has offered, and create a preservation fund of some type, an account that this could be collected into and over the next few years grow.
Okay, okay.
And I think that that is where we're heading with this thing. I'm really kind of against a $20 car tab fee personally, because I think our citizens are being taxed out of existence here in many cases. But I think that this would be a way where we could take existing money that we have available and then build on this every year. And granted, it's going to take a few years to get to where we really feel we want to be. And maybe by that time, we will have budgeted and corrected a lot of these issues where we don't really have to maybe necessarily use that full $7 million every year. So that's kind of where I'm leaning right at the moment.
Okay. Claude, our Councilmember DeCoursey, your thoughts on these 4 areas?
Well, first of all, I think that using the term sustainable funding is the appropriate term, because it's not only a term we would use in the city, we hear that both on the state and national levels as well. And it's so critical to have that in place, so definitely sustainable funding. We have a huge gap. We have a $7 million annual gap. And I've said it before that it's going to be facing future councils as we go forward here. It's probably not something that we're going to be able to totally address in relation to those dollars and come up with that on an annual basis, because money is tight, money will continue to be tight. We need to have our operations of the city continue on, and that costs money. We need to make sure we got the people doing the jobs, and that costs money. And we just need to make sure that we're financially sound as a city, which we are, and continue that on. So I think in many respects, my comments in the past have been, we need to make our roads and streets passable. Now, that comes back into the pavement index rating again, and I think one of the things that this group should recommend back to the council as a body is whether we want to maintain the 70 index, or do we want to allow staff to have something slightly less than that, which could possibly lead into doing additional projects and being able to get more work done, although it's not the ideal rating, but it could be okay to do that for the periods of time we're talking about. The other thing for me is that, and Bill touched on this too, is looking at what's been presented to us and what those dollars are. There are a lot of needs, and some items can be delayed, some cannot be delayed. In fact, one of the ones that I wrote down on here was two items actually I looked at. One was the City Hall structural repairs, which is now listed as a number 1, which means not important on the list we were provided. But my direct comment on that is my only concern.
Can you reference the page number?
This is on page 9 of 32 in our report. This is the 2018 REAP projects for CFP for parks, and then on the back page, on page 9, is the list from administration on facilities. And the identification is the 1 being not important to 5 being important, what the ratings are. And the bottom of the page, it has a City Hall exterior structural repairs, which is rated as a 1, which currently is not important. And my only comment on that is, which we can talk further on here, is that my concern would be that if the cracks in the surface of this building are more than surface cracks, then we have an issue with the structural rebar that's in the masonry. It could begin to rust, which means it swells, and then the masonry starts to spall and fall apart, which compromises the structural integrity of the building. And if that's not corrected, then we have a major issue on our hands with major dollars that need to be spent to correct that.
Well, and that's the same issue, that we've been fighting at the airport, so we don't
Yeah,
want to create the same mess
no,
here.
it's a lot of things related to, as we continue to talk about the conditional needs or physical needs assessments of our facilities in that, and we can talk more about this as we go on. And then the other is, back on City Hall again on page 10 of the roof replacement, and have questions for Ingrid maybe as we go forward here, but also, what is the age of our roof, what type of roofing material, what is the life cycle, so different things of looking at those ratings, because it is important to maintain our facilities as well as to maintain our roads. The other thing, for two other things for me is, I had a couple already, but I have to agree with Councilmember Baggett. I am not in favor, although I did vote for this originally, but I'm not in favor of imposing a $20 card tab fee. I think looking at how we're able to, in some respects, dissect the budget as we have so far, with the mayor being able to come in with additional dollars, and looking at perhaps how we pull some in from other areas to get us to a point where we have a viable, sustainable road program over the next 10, 15, 20 years, knowing that probably we will not ever hit that target of $7 million a year, but getting to a point where, again, I'll use the term passable, where we're doing as much as we can, the best we can, to make sure our roads in the best condition they can possibly be in for that period of time, and knowing again that us and future councils will continuously have to address this issue as we go forward. So those are my comments.
Okay, now let me summarize and bring it back as to what I'm hearing. The first item that I presented was, maybe we're to the point where we're agreeing that the $20 tab is not the best idea. Would all of us feel comfortable that when we get to the point, if it fits in with the total recommendation, that we do not support the $20 tab? Realizing that once we pull all these together, we may change our mind. But at this time, we feel comfortable saying, we're not going to deal with the $20 tab. Go ahead,
I
Clyde.
think I'm comfortable bringing it back to the rest of the council and
Yes.
saying our recommendation
Okay.
is that we would not want
Okay.
to continue to impose this $20 card tab fee, although it was voted
Okay.
on.
Okay.
And as you remember, we have now deferred that decision for another 120 days. So
Bill, how do you feel? Comfortable with that?
I'm not for a $20 card tab this year.
Okay.
The thing, let's see, what page is this? Page 11. Page 11 has got the breakout of REIT 1, REIT 2, and how it affects the Parks Department, Community Development, Public Works, Facilities, and Finance. That's, but before we make a recommendation to full council, we have to vet all this out, pull out the money, the loose money, that can be deferred, with maybe an explanation of why it can be deferred, and and have a one-page recommendation to the council. We can pull out all of these different funding possibilities, but I think that we have to lay it on the table for the council.
Okay.
We can't give them all this stuff, and that's what we're doing. We're filtering this.
My strategy is a little bit different in relationship with what our mayor has shared with us. 20 hours plus of the staff time went into building this, and we spent another 25 hours really studying this. That maybe what we want to do, focusing on sustainability, is capturing the 1 point, Nancy, was it 1.2 or 1 point, I can't remember. Could you clarify it for me?
Shelley, I think it was a little between 1.2 and 1.3 million is
Okay.
what Shelley and I had came up with.
Thank you. I was capturing that for next year, which will be the end of our 2-year budget cycle. And then work with the next 2-year budget cycle where we sit down with staff first and share with them our priority and let them tease the individual items and let them make that list. Because I don't know if sitting here we could go through all of this and tease things out that are significant beyond the 1.2 plus million that the mayor has come up with. That's what I'm thinking. Before we go back to you, Bill, Bob had a comment.
As I mentioned earlier, I think we should create a reserve fund that we should put this money into. And even though there's many things on here that says can delay, I don't believe there's any item on here that can be eliminated. And I think that sooner or later, we're going to have to pay the piper, and we don't want to wind up getting into a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation. So you're right. I believe that we do need to go back to staff and ask them to say, now take this list and fine tune it one more time, and then tell us how much you can really give up. And then we can, as we move into each year, we can then ask how many more dollars that we can put into this reserve, which, like I said before, it could be used for it should be dedicated, or at least priority-wise, for streets. However, if in the event of an emergency or some kind of a situation like that, this money could be used for those kind of purposes as well. I don't want to see it all put into a dedicated street-only kind of a thing in the event of such an emergency situation. So that's kind of the direction I'm leaning.
Okay. Councilmember DeCoursey, what are you thinking along that line, or
Well,
any line?
If we look at the current approved transportation improvement plan,
Page?
this is again page, this is the supplement from Assistant Director Galb
Okay.
on memorandum of engineering services. And it's the spreadsheet we have on the TIP, on the transportation improvement plan. You know, we look at the bottom line of this, and you know, we've got between 2018 and 2023, there's $31 million worth of total capital costs involved in this, and for both the arterial streets and the local streets. So my comment would be, I guess, or my question would be, I guess, is if staff can handle that capacity, and we could fund the $31 million, knowing that we have some large years there of $6+ million, almost $7 million, but if we could, within the monies that we've already talked about, and perhaps as Councilmember Baggett said, a reserve fund program that would allow us to focus on these particular projects over that period of time to get us where we need to be, then if staff capacity can handle that, then I would say we go with this. But again, it's our challenge, as you said, to go back and go back through the budget ourselves as well as with staff and make sure we have the financial wherewithal to accomplish this. If not, we will have to go back through and reprioritize this once again.
What I'd like to do is we've got to start on that concept. And one of the other concepts that we're looking at that I don't think that we've beat to death yet, I think we all agree on sustainability. But I think we need to, Ingrid, have you share with us some more about the CPI. Is it CPI that's 70? And just kind of help us understand, you know, what the standard error measure with that CPI is. I mean, if we drop 5, are we still within the ballpark of having quality, or is the intervals at 10 points? Or share with us your thoughts as city engineer.
Sure. So it's the PCI, Pavement Condition Index. 70 is the industry level for basically where you break from an overlay treatment to starting to degrade into much more significant treatments. So whether that's deep patching, eventually falling down into a reconstruction point. It's not an exact science on that, which is why our staff, while we use the pavement ratings to look at which streets we're wanting to do each year, we go out and actually visually inspect each street to determine what is the appropriate level of treatment. So the PCI is really used as a planning tool for how much needs to be done, but every year that we plan the projects, we go out and specifically pick the streets for what the conditions are on those streets at that time.
I appreciate that kind of empirical check in addition to the formula checks. I think that that's very useful. Councilmember DeCoursey.
So Ingrid, let's take the B Street as an example. a rating of less than 1.
Yep.
Can't get much lower than that, I guess. When was B Street, if it ever was, repaved or redone, first of all?
So B Street, much of the portion that we're rebuilding right now is actually done as part of a local improvement district. I want to say at least 20 years ago, because it was before I started here, I believe. So it's been a while, and we did not do any treatment to that roadway in the meantime.
Okay.
So part of the issue with B Street is that it's also, it was built under our previous standards at the time, which only required about 3 inches of asphalt. And given the amount of truck loading on that road, that's not enough structure for that, as well as the soil conditions under the road. You heard from Jai when he gave the briefing on the B Street project, what we need to do in order to stabilize that road and actually build a structure that can actually handle the truck traffic.
So another question, so when we look at road conditions, if we see some fairly extreme alligatoring in the roads, in your opinion, is that an indication that we are approaching failure, or is there a way where perhaps a grind and overlay can take care of a problem like that?
So it depends upon what we're actually seeing along with that alligator cracking. So are we seeing rutting? Are we seeing dirt particles coming up through that alligator cracking, which is telling us that the subgrade is actually failing below it? So that's part of what we look at, is exactly how much of an issue is it, and whether or not that's just a surface issue, surface wear, which would be an overlay, that would be an appropriate treatment, or whether we need to get down into the subgrade and fix the actual underlying problem.
And I think I asked this before, but I need to ask it again. So Auburn Way North that we just completed, with the grind and overlay on that, what condition was that stretch of road in? And what is the current life cycle now with the overlay that we've done?
So recall that a couple years prior to the overlay that we just did, we actually went out and did some fairly deep patching on there to address some of those subgrade issues where they were the most significant, so that an overlay could be done on the project. With the overlay, you should be getting about another 15 years.
Now, is that now going to be rated 100?
Yep.
Oh, yes. Okay. A question I have we ever looked at some roads having a CPI of 70 and other roads having a CPI of 50? Or do we want everything to be at the same standard? Because, you know, with your roads like Auburn Way that take a lot of huge trucks in B Street, they need to be higher than maybe a neighborhood road, or is that engineeringly flawed?
So the city's policy is a PCI of 70 on average. So that means that you're going to have some streets above that at any one time, and you're also going to have streets below that at any one time. The goal from a preservation program is you don't want to get much below the 70 for a street, because you are getting into much more significant work with heavy patching and or getting into the rebuild as you start seeing that degrade faster. So you want to try to do the overlay program before you get to that point.
Councilmember Pelosa, you've been waiting very patiently.
Well, I still have questions within. Thanks.
Yeah.
I still have questions within the body of the data that we
Great.
received.
Yeah, let's
Can
go.
we go back?
Yeah,
to
let's
some
go
of that?
through it.
Okay. I like the way that the directors gave us the 2017 priority. That makes sense. I'm still a little hesitant on the structural repairs of this building. I'd like to know what kind of structural review has been made of this building. You say, you know, you deferred, but what gave you that deferral?
Dana, do you want to take that one? They're asking for what review has been done on the structural integrity of the building.
I was concerned about, Dana, the deferral of the building. Who did the analysis?
Lisa and the contractors did, our facilities manager, I'm sorry. And it's really just kind of a regularly scheduled maintenance activity as opposed to something that needs to be done or is emergent in any way. So deferring that would not be an issue for two reasons. One, it's a maintenance issue. Two is it's likely that our staff would not get to it this year anyway based on the other projects they have ahead of them.
No, but I'm concerned that she's not a structural engineer.
She is not, but the staff that have reviewed the issues indicate that it's not emergent or necessary to do in the very, very near future. So a 1 or 2 year deferral would not be an issue.
Okay, and I think Claude has something along that same line.
Having some prior experience with this issue.
Okay.
Right.
Excuse us, Dana. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if we're seeing only surface cracking and nothing where the cracks are getting to a point where they're spreading, and you're concerned about the penetration within that going back into the structural rebar, then it's not going to be an issue, and it's typically just a maintenance item. If we see some surface cracking that is giving us some unsettling or some spalling, cracking and deterioration of the masonry itself, then we're in a situation where we could start experiencing structural failure, at which point in time what we need an architectural forensic specialist to come in and analyze the building and provide the recommendations for repair to preserve the building. But it doesn't sound like we're anywhere close to that point, in my opinion.
Well, address the big, huge crack we have coming in our door.
Back door.
That's settling. Okay, that area about coming back in, that's settlement. What I'm talking about is the physical structure of the building itself, with the brick and the masonry on the building itself. The building's going to settle no matter what. That's a condition of in perpetuity. It's going to happen. But as far as the masonry on the building, if we're experiencing some significant cracking and spalling, then we've got some concerns. I don't see that in the building when I walk around it. And I don't believe that, Dana, you've had your people identify anything that conditionally serious where it would require a true expert. And I'll give you an example. When the building I did in Federal Way for the Housing Authority, we had a individual in the area, you may know him, but Paul Lukes came in to do the work for us, who is a worldwide forensic specialist, an architect, and he basically almost condemned the building because the spalling got so bad, the rebar swelled so bad that the building could have collapsed. So we had to do some significant repairs and then re-sided it to prevent that from happening. But nobody took a look at it over the years because nobody thought that the deep cracks were any problem. So we don't have that condition here, but it's something we need to be aware of as we go forward in the future.
Okay, so
Bill, just real quick. I would like to add to that because being a former facilities engineer myself, not a structural engineer, I concur with what Claude has said. I have also looked at the building as well, and I agree that what we're looking at here are just minor things. Now, God forbid we should have an earthquake or something like that. I mean, that changes the whole ball game, and we do need probably forensic people, whether they be architectural experts or structural engineers. They probably would be one and the same to look at the building in that light.
Bill, do you want to go on?
okay, so I'm looking at this one sheet, column sheet, Shelley, and I'm not sure where these. Doesn't give me the date up on what year on the top. I'm looking at page 11 of 32. And there's 250,000 and 200,000 for the city hall.
Yes.
Is that, what year is that? Is that 2018 or?
I think they're for, let me find this teeny weeny print here. I think we did it, I don't have page numbers like you do, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit here. There's facilities, here we go. Okay. Roof replacement. And that 250 and that 200, that is in 2018. That's when we're
20 what?
2018.
2018, okay, so that's, for the city hall, that'd be 450,000 for next year,
Yes.
okay. Page 14. 14 of 32. Talking about the carry forwards.
Yes.
Take 2017, it says total 15 million,
Yes.
16 million. Is that all allocated?
Yes.
Okay. If you go to page 20, your spreadsheet, you talk about rolling stock.
Yes.
Can you, and what's all that blue in those columns?
All right. What we have, there's on this particular page, the top is the rolling stock in dollars, and the bottom is the rolling stock in numbers. What the blue is the replacement year. Taking the top chart, it shows the replacement year when there's going to be dollars spent in each department, and these are in thousands of dollars. So in the administrator mayor in 2022, there'll be $62,000. The city attorney in 2019, $28,000, and so forth. That shows how much will be required for replacement per our schedule. The bottom chart on this particular page shows the number of vehicles that covers. And so if we take 2017, for example, the first column, there's one vehicle in community development, 2 in engineering, 3 in parks, 5 in police, and 1 in storm. There's 12 vehicles to be replaced of rolling stock for a total of about $859,000, going by the dollar chart above.
If we could then also look at page 23 of 32, and that's dealing with rolling stock,
Yes,
City of Auburn asset replacement model.
yes.
How does one determine if we, well, as an example, take the top one, Toyota Prius, revised replacement year 2019.
Yes.
And then it was purchased for 22. I don't understand
Sure.
purchase and projected replacement cost. How do?
Okay. When we purchase a vehicle, we anticipate what the lifespan will be of that car. And when it was purchased in 2005, it was expected to have a lifespan of 8 years. So the replacement year was 2013. However, the replacement cycle is 8 years, is what it's showing. But then when we got into 2013, the ER&R manager looks at this vehicle, determines that it is in good condition, and revises the replacement year. Now, the collection of the dollars to replace the vehicle occurred over the 2005 to 2013 timeframe. So we quit collecting a replacement component because, again, the rental rate is based upon a cost for replacement and a cost for maintenance. However, having said that, there is still a small inflator that is collected on that because we figure that there's going to be inflation from 2013 to 2019. So about 3% of the value of the vehicle is added each year in the rate to stay current. So when we go to replace the vehicle, due to the inflation, we have enough money in the fund to replace the vehicle.
Is there any way to delve out a savings when you don't replace a vehicle in its normal 8 years?
I'm sorry to delve out.
You've got a budget, and if you budget for a new car and you look at it and you say to yourself, oh, that's in good shape, I think we won't need to use that budget that we've allocated for. So maybe we can go another 3-4 years. There's got to be a savings there because of the budget that we've allocated.
Well, that we're not collecting replacement on that vehicle any longer, other than a little 3% inflation each year. But that is taken into consideration when we build the entire rate.
It just seems to me that you've budgeted $50,000, but you find out that that car is good for another 4 years the way
Right.
you're looking at it, and it's usage, sitting in the garage and not used. So that 50,000,
Yes.
could that be reallocated to some other purpose?
Well, if we were to do that, then when it came time to replace the vehicle, we wouldn't have the money to replace the vehicle. And if we reallocated that money elsewhere, then we'd have to figure out if, like in this particular vehicle, if we had it go for 5 or 6 more years, as the schedule is indicating, we'd want to then, through that last 5 years, if we've given that money up that we've saved for it, then we're going to need to collect it again.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
So Shelley, I'm assuming that, well, 2 questions. One is the Priuses are listed under equipment rental. And I believe one of those would be the council Prius?
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain to me why it's under equipment rental, first of all?
Why the council Prius is in equipment rental?
Yeah.
Because it's part of the fleet, and the M&O, or equipment rental and replacement, maintains the vehicle.
Okay.
And it's part of the fleet.
Okay. And then just to be clear, as Councilmember Pelosi was saying, so the departments or the users are charged for that period of the replacement cycle years?
Yes.
Okay. And at the end of the replacement cycle, it zeroes out, no more charges, except for the inflation rate to carry on for whatever life cycle we determine that vehicle to be.
Correct.
And these life cycles could actually even be extended further if we need to extend them further.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any time, any chance, or any opportunity ever to look at a reduction of vehicles?
Well, a reduction of vehicles, I think that's analyzed, but as our staff grows, many of those positions require vehicles. And I would have to defer to the fleet maintenance and manager to answer that question.
Right, and I appreciate it. The reason I asked the question is because I know as staff grows, we're going to probably be looking at more outlay for vehicles because it's what we have to do to support staff and the business at hand. The other question I had was, and if you don't mind, on page 31, this would be for Darrell. Being a user of these vehicles on a semi-regular basis, you have the replacement cycle for the golf carts at 5 years. Is that the life cycle of the golf cart, or are we able to stretch that further?
Yeah, we might be able to stretch it one more year. What we do is purchase our fleet. There's 72 carts, and I think we're purchasing a third. So 72 divided by 3, whatever that is, 26 for 3 years. And then there's a year we don't purchase, and then we roll over the oldest ones again, or the ones in the worst shape. You could probably get a 6th year out of them. It would save some. 5 years seems, that period seems to be working good.
Yeah, I mean, and of course they're used all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, so, and it appears on here that we're actually getting a fairly substantial discount on the purchase of those carts Or
Yeah.
what the price would be.
We're able to use a government purchasing
Okay.
co-op on those, and it's been pretty successful. And the carts, they're electric. They're bringing in about 220,000 a year, I think, in cart fee revenue. But yeah, you could age your fleet out one more year, and there's a savings
Okay.
for that 1 year.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Please, you wanted to share some further thoughts with us?
I'm just here for any further questions. for the
Okay,
fleet.
okay, good, good. Bill, do you have any other thoughts? So, okay. Now, we're going to try to close in about 5 minutes so that we can get set up for the board meeting. And then we also need to decide when we're going to meet next, because I think our next scheduled meeting, you are on vacation, and we have to decide if we want to wait until August or if we can have that next, if you feel comfortable with us meeting without you.
Oh, sure, as long as you have quorum.
Okay, okay. Okay, more of your questions, Bill.
Well, actually, it's a summation statement.
Okay.
So looking at what we would recommend to the full council based on this ad hoc committee. So the summation would be, we have $1.2 to $3 million from the mayor. The next item would be $ X something. And so I think what we'd like to have by the next meeting then would be a summation from Shelley, put together a spreadsheet that shows all of the opportunities for funding, can delay and those type of things, and any others that you think would be appropriate, with a remarks column and a total. So that would be what has been flushed out by the good work of the departments in this review process. Do you follow me on that?
Okay, that shows opportunities for funding. So you're looking at taking dollars from elsewhere to put,
Well, as an example, this first spreadsheet,
yes,
we could take $75,000 it says here, can delay until 1920.
okay, those items,
That, all of those.
off of the REIT.
And then, yeah. And then anything else that isn't on the REIT, because what we're trying to do is summarize what has been accomplished in this review by this committee in trying to delve out funding for a total.
I'd like to add to that, and Bill, you might disagree with this, but it's my recommendation that we stay away from the, what's on page 9, which are repairs. General repairs are not included in each of the department's budgets, and these are pretty significant ones that
Yeah.
we might be shooting I think we'll
Yeah.
be, so
Yeah.
these would be what we need to continue with, but other things that truly are optional and maintenance on big facilities, in my view, is not optional.
But we can show that, but with a remark. This is a maintenance item. We want to
Yeah.
see the
Yeah.
whole
See the whole
thing.
thing.
Okay. I would like to add to that a potential item is the nature park up at Lakeland. Now, that's REIT 2, but maybe something can be moved into that frees up something someplace else.
Yeah, that'd be under the
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, council, you can add on to this. I just took a stab at this. And then, so we'd have 1.2 million, 2 to 3 million by the mayor. Other based on department directors' scrubbing of their budgets. That'd be another dollar amount. That's so we're looking at two. 1.2 million and then other.
Okay. I'm not sure, Nancy, you know, when you came forward with the 1.2 or 3, was that based on scrubbing, or have you already done the scrubbing, or?
I'll let Shelley answer that.
Thank you.
That's based upon just one-time fund balance reserves.
Okay.
Yeah, and that can be in the remarks as an example, Shelley. So we stay on the same thought process. The other thing then would be the ad hoc committee recommendation. We've got the dollars now separated through all this process. Then the ad hoc committee recommendation, I've got down here 2018 street funds. Oh yeah, for next year. So then we would come up with a number for 2018.
Yeah.
Because we're already working 2017. So we'd have 2018 street funding, whatever that residue, 1.2, and then other, that would end up being our 2018 street fund.
And see where that gets us.
And
That
then,
would be a carryover to 18, and
Yeah.
maybe we can
And it wouldn't
budget
be
additional funds in
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but this is just a,
Yeah, but this is
And
just
then-
the 2017 ask it.
yeah.
For
And
that
then we
bucket.
can then take all this and then hash it over and see if we want to add or delete, revise.
I have a question for you, Ingrid. On this document, current approved transportation improvement plan pavement preservation program, where you have the 31 million in yellow listed, 31 million is a lot. Do we have the current staff to be able to implement project management of that 31 million?
So keep in mind, so this is the 6-year transportation improvement plan, and the amount of funds that are currently expected as revenues for both the preservation of arterials as well as local streets. The only funds that are not currently existing funds or plan secured grant funds is about 2.8 million in future potential grant funds for the preservation arterial street program. The rest of that is what we do every year right now.
Okay. Right there. Thank you.
So then,
Unsecured. Okay, there it is.
can I continue then?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then, the next ad hoc committee recommendation would be no $20 card tab for 2017. Because we don't know.
Okay.
In other words, we've done our due diligence for, in 2018, to delve out as much funding as we can.
Well, there's obviously going to be no tax for 2017 because we're halfway through it. So are we talking about the tab for 2017 or the tab for 2018?
Well, we can, well, but 2017, you could still get something rolling in 120 days.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to stop right now because I've got to follow the rules because we got to change activities. So we'll meet in 2 weeks where we left off, and we will keep you apprised, Bob, and thank you for your flexibility.
I will stay tuned.
Okay, and with that, we're going to adjourn.